Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Ableton workshop. This one here is our producer showcase, and I'd like to introduce AJ Sorbello, Seattle house and breaks and what other genres did you not or play?
Speed garage,
Oh my God,
dubstep,
you just
chill, deep house, bass house, the whole works.
yeah. But go ahead. He's going to show us one of his songs that he's made recently. Go through this process, his creative process, and some of the tools and techniques that he uses. So go ahead and take it away.
Okay, so real quick, guys, if you don't know who I am, I'm AJ Sorbello. I'm owner of Build It Records, and I just started a new record label. Well, Build It Records is a house record label. I broke into 3 subgenres: deep house, tech house, and regular house. Okay, and I opened up a new label called No Secrets with my buddy Justin Novak out in the UK. We both kind of wanted to open up something more pop, something where we can, commercialize the electronic dance music, and just kind of showcase people around the world. So this song here, I wrote for this showcase, but now I kind of want to use it for No Secrets label and get a vocalist on it. So what I'm going to talk about is just kind of like the overall what my work process is, what I think about in terms of placement. Okay, so where do I hear this song? I'm always thinking to myself, okay, do I hear it in my car? Do I hear it in a club? Do I hear it at the beach, at a beach club, or at a nightclub? What's the purpose of this? Is it for myself? Is it for me in the car? Etc. So having a label on the business side of things, obviously I'm going to be writing stuff towards, commercial licensing, sync, and, in stores. So if you're listening out there and you want to pick this up, No Secrets Records. I'm going to talk about my mixing. I do a lot of mixing and mastering for artists around the globe. A lot of labels I do a lot of mastering for. So when I get these masters, I hear either a super clean mix or a muddy mix. And what that means is a lot of the sounds, a lot of the tones are overlapping each other. You really need to create that space. So I'm here to show you guys how to create that space amongst your instruments. And then gain stage is huge. Setting your gains so you don't touch your master. I notice a lot of people touch their master. Just a workflow I do. I never touch the master. I will put a limiter on it, but I will start with whatever instrument's going to be the loudest. So in this case, with house music, it's going to be the kick. The kick's going to be up front, and then the other instruments are going to fall behind. So if I'm talking about the kick, I'm talking about the snare, I'm talking about other drum percussion instruments, it's going to have its own room, its own placement. And then we talk about the bass. The bass line that I use the Slim Fatty by Moog. Okay, he has amazing bass patches. I went in there and kind of tweaked it. I'll just get right over to that. So a lot of times people have issues between their kick and their bass. So this, all right, I'm colorblind. I don't know what color it says, yellow, green, whatever it is. And you'll notice these colors are so obscure. I just pick whatever colors my eyes can kind of work with. So I record the Slim Fatty into audio, and then I zoom into the attack, and I make way for that attack of the kick, so that way I'm given that space. Now a lot of people, they don't do that, and they're so used to using sidechain compression. I still sidechain compress, but I don't rely on that. You don't want to rely specifically on just a Band-Aid. Let's get to the point. You guys got to get that signal flow. So if you solo the kick and the bass, there's no phase issue because they're not canceling each other out. So I'll play. Like I do a lot of edits. I love Ableton for the hotkeys. I'm back and forth between Logic and Ableton. Cubase Reason, we were talking about that earlier. Haven't messed around with Fruity Loops so much, but they're all relatively the same to the extent of how fast your workflow is. So I group my drums, I group my bass, I group my instruments, I group my effects, and I have my pads, and I have little effects like reverses transitional pieces, and then I structure my song, which I learned through a dear friend, using MIDI. This is kind of like my placeholder. We got intro, we got verse, pre-chorus, chorus, chorus instrumental, instrumental, bridge. And this track, I want to open up 4 vocals, so keep that in mind. This is just an instrumental track. And I guess I'll just play bits and pieces until if something pops out, then I'll just talk about that more. Okay. And all that's on there is just a limiter. This is called call and response between these two. This is the hook. Slowly breaking down the drums. So I'm going to pause that real quick. So you might have heard the bass, how it pitched up. So if you zoom in, if you click on this button down here, go down to clip, go to transpose, you'll see I ramped up the pitch on that. So that way it kind of gives it that, okay, something's happening next. Okay. All right. So this is the bridge. So it's a different type of vocal altogether. Okay, real quick. So this, right when it gets to the breakdown, the bridge portion, there's no drums. The drums drop out, but there's going to be some type of rhythm because the whole thing you want to have people kind of following something. So, and then with that, the counter melody is going to be able to help kind of create that, okay, something's still there. I'm not so bored of this sound. And then speaking of that, I'm also automating an echo, kind of creating another dimension on the stereo spectrum. And overall, I'm always thinking about 3-dimensional space, my mono and my stereo. You can hear it kind of opening up and then done. So a lot of automation, just to kind of help move things along. You'll notice in each section, it's always building out towards something and then drop or opening. Don't be afraid of playing with negative space. Negative space is your friend. It tells the next portion of the story, the next chapter of the song. Okay. So, which was this portion here. Now, sorry, before we get any further, this sound here, I always do a lot of resampling. So it's really simple. Open up an audio track, resample by just, in case you don't know, just hit audio, resample, and then record whatever you're trying to record. Okay. And now that you can play with so much with audio. It's fun. That's what I love about stamping the audio is you can always, play with it, do whatever you want it to do. Reverse, you got this little button here on the bottom, just above the volume, the gain stage right there. Reverse, it helps push it into the next portion here. So, and what that is the sound above this guy right here. It's the stereo imaging of the back and forth. And if you guys noticed, I added a guitar pluck throughout the whole thing. Subliminal. Okay, so that's that, and then let me go over to the drums real quick. I'm going to go over some of these little transition pieces that I do that it's so subtle you can barely hear it, but it's very crucial to kind of help develop that extra launch right into the next sound or the next bar. Just that right there, that little guy right there.
Reverse hi-hat?
Yeah. Yeah, that's 16s. And then also a reverse kick. That also gives it that real nice punch on the down. Okay. Sorry, guys. And then if you caught this in my effects chain, I created, I do a lot, any audio you see, I've already sampled and redone something to it. Stretched it, duplicated it, added some effects, stamped it. Like I'll add like reverbs, some delay throws, and then I'll stamp it so for less processing, so I don't have to sit there and fight my CPU. Okay. So that started out as just a tambourine, just one little tambourine hit. And then I stamped it, and then I added a reverb on it, top of it again. So I like to group everything together into as if they were individual stems. So when I go to master, I have a clean mix because I can cut a lot of low end, cut a lot of high end, and give each other its placement. So let's go over to the drums. I'm going to solo the drums first, and then we'll go to soloing the other instruments as well. Okay, so the kick I resampled several times. Cut a lot of the mid section out of the kicks because it opens up. I really only want that. I really want to feel the kick more than I want to hear the kick so much. So pulling out that mid section will help. Here, I'll just unmute it for you then. See, you can kind of hear it, and you know what I mean? Like, you don't really want to hear it. You just want to feel it. So cut that. You don't need the low end of that kick. I don't need it. Not a lot of people need it. Usually we cut around 50, but 47 kind of gave me that little extra low end. So it's a lot of times a lot of people want to have a sub underneath their kick, so they leave that open for the sub, and then they'll shave off, they'll low pass where the kick starts on the low side, and then the sub will be on the left side. Okay, and while I'm creating, and I'm actually mixing as I'm producing, because I want to basically make sure everything is in its right place when I look at my spectral analyzer. So I use span on everything because I want to see overall what's going on. So that little bell, gotta love that little bell. I'm fighting that guy right now, but I'll fix that later. But in the end, what you want on an overall mix, you want it to look kind of like a Nike sign. Okay, it's a little secret a lot of people don't know about. Okay, you might want to write that down. I mean, I know anyone that I've ever worked with right now, they're like, AJ, what are you doing? It was like giving out the secrets. Anyways, but you want the kick and then the highs to kind of match. So let me just solo these guys. So right now, the peak is hitting about between 42 and 45 somewhere. So that tells me this shaker hi-hat can actually come up, okay? So I'm saying when you group your drums together, you're going to be able to, you know. Okay, so you get the idea. All right, now let's look over at the bass. The bass is real. It's got a lot of low and it's really fat, and I really picked that up while I'm here in the room. But I love the Moog. It's amazing. So I do have a couple R basses on here, and what R bass does, it saturates that frequency, so it fattens it up. I can probably turn that down. So,
What's the purpose of having both?
those are just two different frequencies. Yeah, so 100 will get that mid range. It's like having an OTT. Just kind of you can have multiple instances. Like some people have 3 OTTs, and it sounds crazy. But you don't slam the depth. You know what I mean? You kind of have to play with it, and it'll open it. It just saturates your sound, so it stands out in your mix. The whole point is to be able to get your sounds to stand out without it overtopping other sounds and creating the space by cutting. So develop the sound, then cut. Okay.
Sorry, just to be clear, by fattening you mean compressing? Is that right?
Well, limiting is compressing, and compressing is yeah. So it does exactly that. So it does compress it. Yeah. Just gains your low and mid. So I'm just going through whatever I think I can talk about in this. Does anyone have any specific questions I can answer?
Sorry, I'm pretty new to this, but what do you mean by negative space earlier?
Negative space? No sound. Opening it up.
Who wants the mic? Dave?
Well, because think about it, sound is creating the space. So you have on a 3-dimensional scale, bottom to top, left to right, your stereo, your frequencies range, your bottom end to your top, and what's forward, and using reverb to pull back away. So it's your space. So negative space is no sound. So when you tighten things up, you can play with that. You know, there's a lot of things about not cutting back. When I was developing this, there was a lot more sounds. What I did do is subtractive production. So you have all these sounds and all these ideas that you have. You arrange it, and they're competing with each other. So then you cut back those sounds and that's subtracting production. Other questions?
Oh, I was curious about that R-Bass plugin you're using.
Yeah, so on the bass, well, because the thing is like, because each bass note has a resonance. Okay, some have more, some have less. Now, if you don't create multiple instances to develop that resonance on those individual notes, then you use R-Bass, so you don't have to. So those specific notes, I'm lacking the resonance, so it's taking the what is those? It's like saturating that sound, that frequency to pull out that resonance, because it's missing. Otherwise, I'd have to open up multiple instances. And if you ever played with analog synthesis, if you move one knob, the whole thing's off, and then trying to get back to it again, you're just like, man. So, and you recorded audio, and I've done maybe like 5 takes of this. I think. Oh, is this the original? No way. Oh, it's not. Okay, I must have deleted it. But it was basically just one note, because I was trying to figure out the pattern. It was like bump, 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 like the theme. So that whole rhythm, you'll notice I used it throughout the whole track with different instruments. Even this little chop. It's got that little swing, bop, 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 bop. So everything has a theme. It's like the hook. Any other questions?
So I know you're in the beginning. You were talking about a lot of the stuff that you think about is like the context of where you would play it. And I noticed that you I think the tempo is 108. Is that
It is 108 BPM.
So would you consider that deep house or what?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I mean, yeah, it is pop, exactly, and that's the initial use for it, because I just started this label, No Secrets, and I'm trying to get more content. I have plenty of content. I got some pretty cool shit going on, but I've made this specifically for this. I actually just put this on Vocalizer tonight. Now I mentioned this earlier. Does anyone else know what Vocalizer is?
I'm assuming it's a service. Is that right?
It is a service
for finding people to actually record their vocals specifically
Yes.
for the track.
You're 100% accurate.
Okay.
You're welcome. Yeah, you basically, it's cool, man. It's really cool. I've met a lot of cool cats. Yeah, it's some good stuff. It's a contest though, so you're going to be paying. It ranges from, some artists charge $700, some people charge $300, some people $100. I mean, if they have access to a studio or not.
Yeah. So
But you actually choose. So a lot of people will like submit their demos and like, hey, I downloaded your track at 128 kilo, and then I put my vocals on it. What do you think? You win? Do I win or not? And yeah, it's a bid. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's sick. So
do they write the lyrics also?
well, you can. So it's a lot of metadata you have to put in, whether or not you want them to or not. If you want a female, male vocal, you want a one-liner, you want a full verse, you want a full song, you want a verse, chorus, whatever, bridge, yada yada. Yeah, it costs. There's definitely a price,
So then,
as it should.
so would you say that this is so? Given that it's more of a pop song, would you say this is more like radio friendly or club friendly, or what would you say?
Yeah, I would definitely think if I'm always aiming for radio, like if we can get on radio, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone's always fighting for that spot, and there's ways of doing it. Even if there's some sounds in there that have to come out, out you go. You know, let's get this thing out there. So you just got to be open to it. You know, it's like, as long as it doesn't take away the vibe of the song, and someone's like, we should make it like, you know, for Hard Rock Cafe or something. I'm like, what? I don't hear, you know, rock guitars in there, man. It's like, come on, let's just strip this out. No. Integrity, you know, you got to have integrity. Okay. So, but yeah, I definitely, I have the bid up there right now. If I can get a one line or two lines, you know, so if you know any vocalists out there listening right now, it's on Vocalizer.
In terms of like the track itself, the instrumental, is there anywhere further you would take this, or is this kind of how you want it to be, short of the vocal, obviously, but in terms of the instrumental, is there other little things that you would go with this?
No, I would probably subtract. Like I mean, because there's no vocal, I'm compensating with a lot of sounds to kind of fill in that space. So if you look at the spectral analyzer, the vocal is going to be sitting about here. Okay, so you got your sub, you got your kick, in the 200 range, 250. You got the bass line that you don't want there. Not in this track anyway. In most cases, this whole 250 range, you really want that open. And then, so you'll see a lot of people ducking at 250. But you have the bottom end snare, you know, little sounds are going to be there. And what this is like mixing individual instruments that you do want to fill in space. So basically what I'm trying to say is you want to fill in the space per instrument, per frequency band. Okay, so there's several bands through within this frequency range. Upper end would be air. Mid-high, you want your vocals, a lot of presence is there. Snare, 2K. 1K is your dead center. And just below that, like saxophone, bass line, upper bass line, like funk bass is going to be in the 700, 900 range. 500, you want to cut a little bit there too, is a little bit of mud. 250, mud, 500, mud, 550, mud, somewhere around there. So that's how you open up your space. Do a lot. So if I were to quickly tell everybody, hey, just high pass up to 200 or 250 on everything but your bass and your kick. That'll just open up everything for your bass and your kick alone. So then it'll clean up that band. And then the next band, clean up your pads or clean up your whatever to kind of give each instrument that space. And then work your way up through the bands. Also, correlation meter is huge. I noticed a lot of people are phasing when I see they're opening up. Anytime this anti-phase signal's going to the left side, that's the phase you do not want to be. You want to be above 50% to the 100, or just never past 0. Okay, so you want to stay here. And how you do that is you can use, if you're using Ableton, use utility. You got the width here, this knob, you can bring this down. It'll totally just mono the whole track if I do this. So I'll just kind of play it real quick for you then. Let me take the limiter off. So it's not moving around, right? That's because I mono this whole track. If I turn it off, it's starting to move because now the stereo's playing. Okay? And do that with everything. Okay? Right? That's mono, off. Now the stereo, the three-dimensional space is opened up again. Make sense?
I have a follow-up question to your Nike swoosh statement. I'm just curious, are you talking instrumentals or full mastered tracks? Because I've never heard
mastered.
I've never heard the swoosh. I've always heard just like basically the 6 dB reference line.
Yeah, they're thinking pink noise. So that's yeah. No, that's if you're mixing the pink noise, and a lot of people do mix the pink noise. I started out that way. That's just gain staging. And now that I've mixed so many different genres of music that I really just kind of go to, okay, well, what's the most prominent sound? It's all, if any electronic music, kick and snares are going to be the most prominent sound. Kick, especially, if anything. So you go over to the mixer view. You want your kick to be about -12 to -10. This just opens up so much headroom already. And that's why you'll notice without the limiter on my master, I'm still at -15 decibels from before I'm hitting 0. I'm not smacking, I'm not playing around with that. Keep everything below -10, -10 to -12 on your kick, and then mix behind it. Okay, so then if you're going to group your drums, and then you span it, and then so you go, all right, where's my, I just closed that group, sorry. I'm used to 2 screens. Where's my second screen? Okay, solo the kick. All right. So that's -16 because that's the intro kick. Totally separate kick from the main kick. So let me just Command L. There you go. Cool. All right, so that's hitting around -12, and then your snare, clap, whatever, it's going to be about the same. Hi-hats, a couple decibels behind that, and start working your way down. So that's working from my left to right. Oh, second screen. Move. All right, where are we at? Okay. All right, screw it. We'll just start with the shaker. Okay, so that can come up. That's going to be the highest thing in there. All right, so where is that hitting? So if I'm hitting here and my hi-hat's peaking above that, then I want to bring that down. Okay, so it's saying I'm at -16. Bring it up a little bit. All right, cool. I'm happy with that. -16, somewhere around there. Oh, why did I just close that? God. First world problems. There you go. Thank you. All right, so still nothing is on the master. The limiter's turned off. Other thing too, kick is going to be mono, not stereo. So always mono your kick. So there's going to be in your drums, you want those to be mono. So if you get your drums to sound good in mono, and then you can add room reverb overall without the kick, okay? Because that's always going to be mono. Some people add it to the whole thing. I just did it just because. But yeah, this kind of creates. It's not sounding like a congos and in a different arena, and then you got hi-hats in a wood room, and then you got claps in a bathroom. You know what I mean? You kind of want everything to be together. If you're standing there in front of a band, you're not. Yeah, you want to be in the same room. Certain times you want some effects, like some really big claps or some big snares, that kind of give it like that if it has that vibe. But for something like this, you kind of want it to give it that one room. Okay, so mixing gain stage, just remember kick, -10, give yourself that headroom. Okay, and don't go above that. Do not go above that with any other sounds, even though I did it with my bell. So, yeah, like I said, I started this track a couple days ago and did a lot. I just love playing with automation. I look at the overall structure as I'm playing an instrument. So I don't want it to sound like I'm a robot, a mechanical machine. I want it to have some live element to flow and kind of talk to each other. So that way it sounds more natural. I can have it playing in the background without it disturbing. And if it sounds mechanical, it'll be too abruptive to me. So I'm like, okay, change it. I need to be able to feel like I can sit there and listen to it longer than not. Do you have a question?
Yeah. My question was about the guitar pluck that is consistent throughout.
Yes.
That's something I've been noticing in a lot of music I'm listening to. There's always some element that is always consistent in electronic music and hip hop and down tempo and all that stuff. Can you speak more to the importance of that?
Absolutely.
Having a consistency.
Absolutely. So it is. So this is kind of like it's the upstroke. It's the note that everything's actually playing around. That simple one note, upstroke. Everything else is playing around it. It's like the kick. It's like the starting point. Like the kick is going to be very consistent throughout the track. This is not a kick. It's less, in your face, and it's the vibe. Funny. It's just how's that soloed? What happened here? Okay. I did some automation there for you. So yeah, just this. I'm like chilling at the beach, just kind of like bobbing my head. What else can I add? What else can I add to this? There's my pads. Something sweet around it. A little melody playing around it. So as you can see, I know the guitar pluck's really loud comparatively, but it's kind of what really drives the vibe. And you're not really paying attention to it at all because there's no melody to it. It's just a tonal sound that's just kind of there, just driving the track. Because if I turn it off, it's going to be like, fuck, I'm excuse my language, I'm missing something, It's like... If I turn it back on, now I got more of a bop. Let's see, just kind of keep that. Yeah, it's like it's there, it's in your face, but it's also subliminal because you're not really thinking to pay attention to that. Now you see it, now you know it's there, and now that's all you're focusing on. So. Yeah, the empty space. So this is negative space when there's... So just playing with negative space gives you that impact on the next down. So it's... Everything back in. And there's a lot of melodic call and response. So that will break up the monotony of the same sound. You kind of want to extend your 2 bars into 4 bars of a progression. And the pads I have super low because I want the other sounds to take its place. So a lot of times people will bring that pad up like super loud and then you won't be able to hear a whole lot. See how it just takes precedence over everything else? So you start backing it down. Give yourself that room, that space. So not only is it EQing, so like I mentioned before was the 3-dimensional space. You got left, right, forward, back, top, bottom. Bottom being the bass, the top being your treble, your left and right, your forward being up front, and then in volume and turning the volume back or adding reverb to pushing it back. Now that's that 3-dimensional space. So if everything is up front, everything is just going to be hitting you all at once. That's not sweet. That's not a 3-dimensional space. You want to have that 3-dimensional space turning things down in the back and opening up. So I'll bring this back up again and listen to the other sounds start to become more clear as I bring it back down. It's still there. See, it's quiet, it's subtle. I'm sorry, I turned the limiter off, so you guys are really trying to use your ears. Bringing it back down. Okay, so
I've got a question for you, AJ. You have talked a lot about, the three-dimensional space when you're mixing. For everybody, Ozone Imager is awesome and a free plugin for seeing where you are in the stereo field. So I'd suggest that for everybody. But I was curious if you have any other tips for visualizing that 3D space, and also if you got any go-to references as far as where you position your instruments.
So it's a very good question. I have several different tools. So tools are, it's I use this spectrum or stereo field. Like I know Isotope has one, the Stereo Imager. Infected Mushroom has another one. I use Scope. I love Scope. So you'll notice here, the top, this square here, this spectral analyzer is going to be mono. This spectral analyzer is going to be the side, all the stereo. So this will tell me how much stereo is in and where I need to be cutting at. Instead of using the span. Span is, it doesn't really tell me like this does. Like there's other plugins out there you can use to kind of check it, to utilize to see what's going on. And if you want to add the stereo space, then you can do several different techniques. I mean, if this was a mono sound, if I were just mono that, you can duplicate, you can pan hard left, pan hard right, and then you can add like a delay to kind of give it that phase. You can do, or just add a phase. What else? You can widen it with utility. This down here at the bottom, you'll see, where am I here? Let me undo what I just did. I just duplicated that. So
and I was going to say, maybe you could shed some light on this as well, because, there's mid-side EQ, and I feel like when I'm trying to bring things into the stereo field while still leaving space for a vocal or something that's supposed to be mono, I find myself cutting out, basically trying to widen it as much as I can, and then cutting out the mids with a mid-side EQ. Does that stand to reason?
Wait, you would cut the mid on a vocal?
No, on
Okay,
like
good.
a synth to make room for a vocal.
Oh, yes, correct. Yeah, you can definitely want to do that. You can cut the mid, keep the sides. Yeah, so if you did the mid here, the sides will still be there. Or if you can add another one and make that one your side. And if it's low, if the mid is bringing down the sides in conjunction to the stereo, you can always just gain it up too.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's so many different ways of doing the same thing. So you can use multiple plugins or use the same plugin if it has that function to do it, instead of using multiple DSP. It's going to slow your computer down.
So Mindy upstairs is curious what your favorite plugin is, or what effect you use the most.
So effects, that I have a lot of effects, and the reason behind that is because it's having a different plugin that does virtually the same thing. There's like 10 different saturators, 10 different compressors, and they all have a different color. So it's like if you're a drummer, you have different mallets, you have different sticks, and they all do the same thing. They all hit and they make a sound. And each individual plugin is going to have a different color to it, and that's why there's these go-tos that people say that they have. Because I mix so many different genres of music for different artists and different labels, I can't just stick to one. I have to think, okay, what were they using? I mean, if I really want to get super analytical, were they using Fruity Loops? Were they using Ableton? What plugins? Were they using Waves? Were they using Plugin Alliance, Sound Toys, blah, 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 blah. Do I get any sponsorship out of that? That'd be awesome.
Sound Toys, send us stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't need it. I got a lot of this stuff already, and that's the thing, is like having different plugins is going to open up your palette for the different tools to get those colors, and then just deciding which one's going to work the best. You're like, you know what? I don't like that color. I don't like how it's sitting in the mix. Let's move on to the next one and kind of go down that chain and organize your tools so that way you're not sitting here trying to hunt around for it. You can, in Ableton, you can create folders for distortions, whatever effect tools that you want to use. So build your instruments, build your tools for your color, your mix, and then my favorite tool would have to be the spectral analyzers. I mean, just hands down. If you want a clean mix, I wouldn't know what a clean mix was if I wasn't staring at it. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing I had was in terms of like automation. Do you tend to do some volume automation in between different sections?
Never do volume automations. Well, I can't say never. I would say 98%. I do not do any volume automations because you never know. I mean, you might hear something else, and then you're like, "Oh, great! I just brought that down." Then something else is going to be in the way. Just don't do that. Just set your mix, set your gain stages for everything. And if you do want to add that automation, do it at the end, so you're not having to not while you're in production. Do it way later, like the very last thing that you ever do. So I would start building my drums, then my bass around my kick, and then the progression with pads, keys, melody notes or whatever, and then effects, and then the arrangement and effects, and then go back little minuscule little things, and then vocal last. Never do vocal while you're in the middle of mixing or creating. I'll make sure your track is ready for a vocal before you even add a vocalist.
Awesome. One last question, and then we'll close it up.
Sorry, I was just gonna say. What was I gonna say?
I don't know.
Never mind. It's not important.
So given that you work with a lot of genres, you touched a bit on how you EQ the kick and bass out of each other's way, and then some compression. Do you change that for different genres?
Yes, absolutely. So, for example, bass music, I'm going to really stay away from any of the low mid-range area. So like 200 range, I'll want that completely almost empty. I won't have like that mid-low bass there for bass music. I would have just the kick and the sub, like 808s, things like that. Like I'm not going to have an 808 play in that 200 range. A lot of people don't realize that that's going to muddy the crap out of your mix. You want to think smiley face, right? For hip hop, open up for the vocal. But in this case, you really want to look at like a check. Like a check. Think boom and then boom. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that does it for our time. Let's all thank AJ for giving us a presentation tonight. And if you have anything you want to say before we sign off, please feel free. Any other advice you have. But thank you for your time. I know he's got a gig tonight, so he's probably got to get going soon. It is 9:30. So, all right. Anything else you want to give?
If you don't have span, get it. Like I said, and then that kick or whatever that's going to be up front, make sure you have the headroom and do not touch the master. Start with a limiter. Definitely put a limiter on there so that way you know what everything is going to sound like when it goes to master. Then turn it off when you're ready to go to master.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I have the limiter on there. I'll turn it off when I actually am trying to mix my song. But while I'm building it, it's helpful just to get that reference, because even when you're making your song, like he showed earlier, your mid-range is going to be low because when it goes to master, that's all popping out. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.